Nairobi 94.4, Malindi 97.7, 90.9 in Nyeri, Eldoret 96.7, Nakuru 96.0, Kisumu 102.5, 87.9 in Mombasa, and we broadcast worldwide, www.spicefm.co.ke. We're also on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Let's take the conversation to regional politics and regional affairs. We have been discussing Tanzania almost every week. So every week you find out, we keep asking ourselves, so what's happening in Tanzania? First of all, COVID-19, are they fighting COVID-19? Is there COVID-19? We see their leadership coming out and saying, well, we prayed for 3 days, and now COVID-19 kwisha Tanzania. And then there's this other aspect of it, that Tanzania is preparing for a general election that's coming up later this year. And when if you look at Tanzania and how it's conducting itself, general election in mind. Look at Burundi, general election was in mind. Look at Trump's administration. They have their eye focused on the general election. Talking about reopening the economy and all this push for reopening of the economy, general election in mind. But back to Tanzania, a general election is coming, but the opposition is basically like speaking from the hills. Because the president of Tanzania has taken time and spoken openly. He is not one who hides. He's spoken openly. He does not entertain opposition. We have seen opposition members of parliament and how they are treated in parliament. You've seen opposition parties and how opposition parties have done. We've seen the person who was the joint opposition candidate in the last general election has come and has had a handshake with the President Magufuli. And now we've also seen in 2017, this opposition member of parliament, very vocal man, he is a lawyer, he is a member of the opposition Chadema political party. He was in parliament, he'd come out of parliament. Man was shot right there in Dodoma. And he had to be airlifted to Nairobi, later airlifted to Belgium, where he's been. He has been undergoing treatment, has undergone a number of operations. And now he's able to speak to us. And as we gear towards the 2020 general election in Tanzania, it's good to find out whether he also wants to come back and participate in this election. The gentleman himself is Tundu Lissu. Tundu Lissu is saying he's going to vie in this particular year. He's a former president of the Tanganyika Law Society, the Bar Association of Tanzania Mainland, and the chief legal officer for the Tanzanian opposition party. Good morning, Tundu.
Good morning, kaka. Habari za Nairobi?
Nairobi, mvua na baridi. Habari za Belgium?
Okay. Belgium is fine. Belgium is summer. It's sunny. It's beautiful.
Great.
Welcome to the Situation Room, Tundu Lissu.
Thank you so much for having me in the Situation Room. I'm ready to roll.
Good.
Oh, fantastic.
It's good to hear you speaking and being so, energetic. Tell us, how are you doing health-wise?
I'm doing very well. My doctors have declared me fit to go. And so I'm basically raring to go.
Okay, let's start with
no
you.
No health issues. I have a bit of a limp, but nothing really to prevent me from doing what I love doing.
Right. Well, maybe we can ask ourselves, or ask you then in this case, and starting with you, a double-headed question. First of all, what is this thing that you love doing? And then number two, after you were shot, who did you think did it and why?
I will start with the first one because it is very easy. Everyone knows what I love doing, and I love doing politics. I love doing politics with the people. So that's the easy part.
Right.
The second one is who was behind the shooting. And I have always said publicly, and I will say it now, I know I was shot because I was very much a pain in the backside of some very big people in the government of Tanzania. I was a pain in the backside of President Magufuli. And I know, and I have been told by people very close to, the center of power, very close to President Magufuli, that I was actually shot on his own personal orders. Now, I was told that, and therefore anyone can say, "Well, you cannot be serious, Mr. Lissu. You are a lawyer. That's hearsay." It is hearsay, yes, but let's look at what happened. Let's look at what happened on the day I was shot. More importantly, before I was shot and after I was shot.
Right.
I was the opposition chief whip in parliament. I was living in a government housing compound paid for by Bunge. My apartment was a Bunge apartment. It is secure 24/7. And I had lived in that place since I first got elected in 2010. This heavily guarded government compound, you have the outer security perimeter, which is guarded 24/7, and you have inner security perimeter on each individual block, which is also guarded 24/7. And you have CCTV cameras. Now, on the day I was shot, security in the outer perimeter, outer and inner perimeter was removed. So there was completely no security whatsoever. I was not shot outside in the streets. I was shot outside my apartment block on the driveway. No security whatsoever. And the government of Tanzania and the police force have never told the world, have never told Tanzanians who removed the security in that government housing compound where ministers live, where the deputy speaker lives. The deputy speaker is my neighbor. Actually, I was taken to hospital by the housemaid or the speaker. She drove me to hospital. All right. Who removed the perimeter, the security in that government housing compound?
Was there an investigation conducted into this incident? Was an investigation conducted into this incident?
There has never been, as far as I know, there has never been any investigation. There has never been any report of any investigation. They have done absolutely nothing. And the reason is they say, we cannot investigate because Mr. Lissu and his driver have fled to Belgium.
Yeah.
You get my point?
Right. But okay, so Tundu, just before you go on to that, Tundu, is that, you were very clear at this point that you were opposition leader. However, you were resident in an apartment that was paid for by the government. So then, suffice to say that you had every right to ask questions then about what happened. Suffice to say also that you were a little bit preoccupied at the moment, at that time, getting well, right? But then did you ask any questions? Did you forward, a query as to what could have possibly happened when you found out details of what transpired that day?
These queries have been asked by everybody who has spoken about the assassination attempt against me. Everyone. And no answers whatsoever. No answers whatsoever. But before that, before the shooting, 2 hours before the shooting, President Magufuli was on national television. And President Magufuli loves hogging the networks, right?
As does any politician.
Well, I have stayed in Kenya long enough to know how you politicians behave themselves.
Yes.
So they are not nowhere near. They are not in Magufuli's league.
Okay.
All right. Now, 2 hours before I was shot, President Magufuli said on national television that those who betray the country when it is engaged in an economic war do not deserve to leave. Those are his exact words. The guy speaks such bad English, but that day he spoke in English. He said they do not deserve to leave. Wanaosaliti nchi ikiwa kwenye vita ya kiuchumi do not deserve to leave. Now, who are these people who are betraying the country when it is an economic war?
Economic saboteurs.
Not economic saboteurs, brother. Magufuli had gone about confiscating people's property, unlawfully so. He had been throwing people in jail without due process, confiscating property, seizing this, seizing that, calling that an economic war. And I oppose that. I oppose him so vehemently and so directly. We're talking about the mining sector here.
Yep.
And
So
I'm someone who has...
You were raising all these issues in Parliament. Of course, you are the opposition chief whip. You are raising the issues in Parliament,
well,
outside Parliament.
Absolutely, yes.
Let's talk about the opposition and
then
how the opposition and the government were engaging at the point, and even how the opposition and government of Tanzania are engaging even now. What would you say is that relationship between the opposition and government?
Only last week, today is Monday, right?
Yes.
Monday last week, the leader of the official opposition and the chairman of my party, Chadema, Mr. Mbowe, was attacked in his residence, in the same, basically behind my apartment block. In exactly the same area, government housing compound, which is guarded 24/7. This time around, they removed the security, saying, we don't want the security guards to get infected with corona. Corona, that they say, is finished because we prayed it away. So Mr. Mbowe was attacked by thugs, hired thugs, been beaten up senseless, and got his leg broken. He is in hospital as we speak. That is the leader of the official opposition in Tanzania Parliament. Is the chairman of the largest political party, opposition political party in the country. And he gets beat up like that by thugs after security has been removed. And only yesterday, the speaker, our bunge is heavily dominated by CCM. The speaker, they have been saying since day one, since he was attacked, that he was drunk. Where was he coming from at that time of the night? He was attacked around 1 o'clock in the morning. He was drunk, he fell. Guys.
He broke his leg.
He broke his leg.
So what I'm hearing you saying... What I'm hearing you saying, Lissu, is that there has been, and this we hear you say, this we hear other Chadema politicians say, is that there's a crackdown on the opposition in Tanzania.
There has been a crackdown on the opposition in Tanzania from the day Magufuli became president.
So this is explicitly by the Magufuli administration. It wasn't there in the previous administrations.
No, we have never gone through anything like this in our entire lives as a multi-party state. We've never seen this kind of repression before. Now, I wanted to say that the thing is, Magufuli has been absolutely clear about what his intentions were. Basically, hardly 3 months after he was sworn in, he was sworn in on November 5th, 2015. Now, exactly 3 months later, on February 6th, the 39th anniversary of his party, of CCM, President Magufuli said on national television, as I said, the man loves television. he said on national television that he would see to it that by year 2020, by this election year, there is no opposition party in Tanzania. On national television. So, as they say, the rest is history.
As you can see.
The rest is history.
As we are getting towards
Yes.
As we're getting towards the election later this year, because he was talking about by the next general election, and this is the next general election, we still have opposition parties. They're still there. They haven't been unfolded. They haven't been declared illegal or unconstitutional. The parties still exist.
Yes.
Do you think the support for the opposition is still the same as it was 4 years ago?
I think it has grown bigger.
How would you tell that?
We have survived. Because we have what we did not have 5 years ago. That is to say, today we have more. We are organizationally stronger. We have far more presence almost everywhere in the country. What we didn't have prior to 2015. And the reason is simple. And I think it is important you understand what I'm talking about here.
Yep.
After Magufuli came to power, we were completely prohibited from doing any public activity, political activity. No meetings. Absolutely no meetings. No public meetings. No rallies. Our party, my party, Chadema, basically grew up on the public square, grew up in public meetings. Suddenly, we found ourselves being compelled, being refused to hold any public meeting anywhere. In fact, the first 2-3 years, it was even impossible to carry out internal party meetings. We meet as a central committee. Police thugs come and they break the meeting, they arrest people. So what happened then? We were compelled to change our tactics. If you cannot hold public meetings, you do the opposite then. You go underground. And therefore today, we have structures and leadership, elected leadership, at all levels, from the lowest to the highest, almost across the country. We didn't have that in prior to 2015. And it's simply because we were beaten up in the head. We had to dig deep into the society.
Okay.
So in terms of organization structure,
I hear you saying, Tundu, essentially that had it not been for what you call the kind of oppression of the opposition in this case, then it would not have been as strong as it is today.
I believe so. Okay. I believe so, absolutely.
So then why have you chosen to be away from Tanzania at this point? You're calling yourself a political refugee in some quarters. Why have you chosen to stay or to be away?
Have I chosen that?
Have you?
My dear. I survived 16 bullets.
Right.
I survived 16 bullets, and actually thanks to Kenyans, thanks to you people. I have said it so many times that I'm partly Kenyan because I have lots of Kenyan blood running through coursing through my veins.
Right.
I survived 16 bullets. I have had 24 surgeries. Okay? Those who shot me, those who wanted me dead, are still at large. The government, the police force of Tanzania, has stated publicly that they have no suspect. They have made not a single arrest. They have not made a single prosecution. For all intents and purposes, nothing happened. Nothing happened. And I know, and there have been this chatter on the internet that we'll get him. He comes back, we'll get it. This time we'll not miss. As if they missed the target last time. I got hit 16 times.
Right.
Yep.
They
did not miss the target.
So it seems that there's a target
They
on your
missed
back
the
even now.
All right? So they have crosshairs on my back, on my head, somewhere. All right? Now, under such circumstances, it's only natural that I take precautions.
For your own safety.
Dead people tell no tales. Dead people tell no tales.
That makes
Yeah?
absolute sense. Now, if we look towards elections, this is an election year in Tanzania, and taking into
Yes,
consideration
yes.
all that has happened previously, Tundu,
Yes.
you've said very clearly that if the party sees you as a fit choice, you would not.
Yes.
You put yourself up for running for the presidency of Tanzania. That would require you.
Absolutely.
That would require you at some point to be back in the country, even with the target.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, even with the target on
Yes.
your back. If that nomination did come through, and if that go ahead came through from the people, essentially, would you go back?
Absolutely. If I'm nominated candidate by my party, then I will be heading to Tanzania. The point is this. With a nomination and with the kind of national and international attention that will bring, I believe my security will be more assured. There will always be a risk. I'm not saying it's going to be completely risk-free. But in conditions where I am a presidential candidate and Tanzanians are watching and the people of the world are watching, our friends and neighbors across our northern borders are watching, as you are, then I believe my security will be better secured than in any other environment. And therefore I have said, if I'm a nominee of my party to face Magufuli, I will I will go to Tanzania and I will tell Magufuli and his people, here I am. Let's get going.
With the kind of crackdown that you say has happened with the opposition parties and even with the opposition candidates, we saw in the civic elections where a number of your candidates were not even cleared to vie. Do you even see yourself being cleared?
Not a number.
90?
Brother, 96% of our candidates were disqualified.
Yep. So I want to ask you directly, Tundu Lissu, do you see yourself being qualified to vie for the presidency?
Wait a minute. It is always important to know where these things come from. Magufuli got it from Jomo Kenyatta in 1969. Yeah? Kenyatta disqualified all opposition candidates in 1969. So that's where our people, we are learning a few lessons from you, Kenyans.
All right.
Take even the good ones, okay?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. So back to your question. Am I assured that I will not be disqualified? Of course I'm not. But that does not mean I will not run. I will run and let them do the disqualification, and the world and the people of Tanzania will decide what to do.
There are some quarters that have argued. Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead. Finish.
Yeah, I was saying that whatever happens now, they will have to do it in the open with the world watching. Yeah, with the people of Tanzania watching and with the world watching.
There are those that have argued
we are asking the world not only to watch, not only to make verbal condemnations, but to take punitive actions. Governments which behave this way do not deserve
So, Tundu, there are those that have argued. Are you still on the line?
I'm on the line.
All
I'm
right.
on the line.
There are those that have argued, both in Tanzania and outside Tanzania, that one of the tools that the opposition could use in this particular case is to boycott the election altogether. Basically, go out publicly and say, look, if we got 96 of our candidates disqualified in the last election, if we are seeing the kind of intimidation and harassment of our opposition leaders, even now you're talking about just 10 days, less than 10 days ago, the leader of the opposition in parliament gets roughed up. If we are seeing this kind of treatment by the government of opposition, then the tool that you can use, and it could be powerful, is by declaring and going out all out and saying, we boycott this election, and calling on your membership to boycott the election.
If we boycott the elections under Tanzanian law, they will pass unopposed. All of them will be deemed to have been elected.
Yep.
And in the presidential, in the parliamentary election, the law says that a member of parliament who is deemed to be elected is deemed to have received 51% of the total vote. And that will be the presidential tally as well. Now, we are not going to allow them to be deemed to have been elected.
Okay.
We will give them a run for their bloody money.
Could be bloody money in this case, in how you've been,
All pun intended.
Right, in how you've described it. But I mean, just furthering that just a little bit, Tundu, and you've talked about, obviously, for you to run, there's some kind of change that you want to be able to bring into. And
Absolutely,
we've looked at certain narratives that have been created or folded. It could be the truth, but maybe you can now give us an eye into what Tanzania looks like that you might want to change. We have been, one narrative that we've been given is that media has been shut down, and we're talking about local and foreign media in terms of, the stories they tell, specifically when it comes to government. Number two is that the people of Tanzania may be a little bit too afraid to be able to open up and talk about the injustice they may face from a Magufuli administration, or are very happy with the Magufuli administration in the way in which things are being run. And thirdly, most recently, the state of COVID in the country, whereby, as you said, that, prayers have been said over the country and, everything is all right. These are the narratives that have been drawn, painted for the country. From where you sit, are there stark differences between what these narratives have painted and what your belief or what your overview is? And what would you be hoping to change?
Well, I will start with the last, with COVID-19. The last time the government of Tanzania gave any data about COVID-19 in Tanzania was on April 29th of this year. And at that time, they were burying people at the dead of the night in secret graveyards. People were dying without explanation, it was horrible. And then the president went live again. The president loves television. And he said, no more information on infections, on hospitalizations, on deaths. No more secret burials. No more telling people why somebody died. And therefore, we have defeated COVID-19 very simply by not talking about it, by not saying anything about it other than to say, the God is on our side, we are COVID-19 free. All right? It is true. In Kenya, as well as in Tanzania and almost everywhere in Africa, we have not seen the kind of death that we saw in Europe, for instance. In this small country where I live, in Belgium, over 9,000 people died in 3 months
Yeah.
for a country of 11 million people. You know the numbers in the UK, in France, in Italy, Spain, and
Right.
US and elsewhere. So it is true that the pandemic has not hit Africa the way I personally fear, and the way that medical experts fear, WHO fear. It hasn't hit us that hard. But that is not to say that it hasn't hit us that hard because we chose not to speak about it. There may be other factors. They have absolutely nothing to do with what our government did or did not do. Particularly when you are not being given any information whatsoever. People continue to die. The difference between Kenya and Uganda and other countries and Tanzania is, if it happens in Kenya, we know it because you will be told by your government. If it happens in Tanzania, you will never know because the government has chosen to say absolutely nothing about COVID-19.
Yeah.
So that is the first part of your question. The other part deals with the effects of the crackdown and media. I think that was the first part of your question, right?
Yes.
As I said earlier, we have gone through hell. And I say we have gone through hell, not only us in the political parties, but the independent media in Tanzania has been hit real hard. Journalists, Mwananchi newspapers is partly owned by the Nation Media Group of Kenya.
Yeah.
One of their correspondents, Azori Gwanda, was picked up by people who identified themselves as policemen, picked up from his home, told his pregnant wife that I'm being taken to the police station, and he has not been seen or heard from since November 2017. Newspapers have been shut down. Journalists have been arrested, prosecuted in court. Radio stations have been penalized. And the president, our president who loves national television so much, said on TV that the press should not think they are not that free. On live television. Now, so you have a situation where if you pick up a newspaper in Tanzania that is not even owned by the government, or you tune in on the radio stations or the television networks, in fact, particularly those that are not government owned,
Yep.
the music that they sing is not different from TBC, the government owned network. The newspapers write stuff. They basically publish these statements that are sent from Ikulu,
Yep.
and they print them exactly as they are.
Yep.
Editors are told on the phone to write or not to write particular stories. So the state of the media in Tanzania is worse.
So there is state
than at
censorship
any
of the
period.
media.
It is worse than at any period since the 1970s.
Everybody watching our live stream on YouTube, Spice FM KE, watching the same live stream on Facebook, Spice FM KE, and Twitter, Spice FM KE. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room, we have CT Muga, Ndu Oko, Eric Latif, and on the line, joining us from Belgium, is Tanzania's opposition leader from the Chadema party. He's also a lawyer. He is Tundu Lissu. He has been in Belgium since he went there for 2 years. He's been undergoing treatment after he was shot 16 times. 16. We can't just say he was shot. He was shot 16 times outside his apartment block in Dodoma, which is owned. He was basically being housed by the government of Tanzania through the Parliament of Tanzania. He was a member of Parliament. He lost that seat soon after because he was absent for a number of consecutive times. And he was undergoing treatment, obviously. He talks about wanting to go back to Tanzania. He wants to participate in the next general election. He'd like his party, Chadema, to give him their party ticket. CT.
Mheshimiwa, there's a question I'd like to ask. This is the background from which I'm asking it. There's a narrative that, unfortunately, has dogged many, many African leaders. When they're in the opposition, they have promises and they have virtues that makes everybody want to vote them in. Now, the moment they get the coveted seat, then they turn to be something completely opposite to what the people who elected them expected. What guarantee do the citizens of Tanzania have that should you actually get that seat and become president, that you'll be a transformative leader?
Tanzanian citizens should not just elect and go back to sleep. They should elect leaders and put their feet on fire all the time. What I mean is this. Leaders will always misbehave if they are not held to account. What we need, therefore, is not just to elect good leaders, but to make sure that they don't turn bad. Because people have a tendency of changing once in power. We know that from our own bitter history. And therefore the trick with us is, we are not angels. What will make us not change is if our people are engaged on a continuous basis. We want a citizen. We don't want subjects. You get my point?
Yeah.
Number two. Leaders turn bad when laws and constitutions are designed in such a way that leaders become unaccountable. We have a constitution in Tanzania and our laws, and Mwalimu said, and I said it last week when I was announcing my bid. Our constitution, according to Nyeri 1978, gives the president sufficient powers to be a dictator. Who needs that kind of constitution? Today, you Kenyans you live in a democracy. You have your issues, we know. You have your issues. But you are not where you were in the 80s when you were being hunted down by Moi's thugs. You are not where you were in the 60s when Kenyatta was destroying the opposition and destroying democracy, the 60s and 70s. Because you fought, you created a new constitutional dispensation, and you constantly hold your leaders on fire, their feet on fire. They are always on their toes. That is the kind of citizenry that we need in Tanzania that will ensure that leaders live up to their promises. If they don't, they get the boot up their backside. That's the only way for leaders to behave.
You know, if you have a citizenry that has been cowed and that have been used to being told exactly what to do and are expected to do what they are told at the risk of probably their own lives, how then do you get them to change to be this proactive citizenry who are constantly taking challenging the leadership that they have elected?
Well, Kenyans were like that at some point in their lives. They changed. Our people will change. Actually, our people have changed a lot. The fact that we have seen this kind of violence from Magufuli, it is because people were not taking orders as they had done previously. And what he has done, the result of this repression is, as I said earlier, today, the opposition may be bruised and battered, we are not dead and out yet. We are still alive and kicking. And our people today, in my view, are wiser politically than they were 5 years ago. So Magufuli's project to send Tanzania back into the 70s has not worked, and it will not work. And I believe, I'm optimistic, that the post-Magufuli world is a much better world for Tanzania.
All right.
Thanks because of these doors of repression that we have received these 5 years.
All right. When President Magufuli came into office initially, he was seen as the cleanup president, and quite a lot of offices in the country, he went in and said, we're not going to allow this corruption, cleaned it out. We're not going to allow Tanzanians sitting around doing jobs, or rather seeming to be doing jobs, and we wanted a working Tanzania. And it was said here that was a narrative that was peddled across the region. And even here in Kenya, people said, oh, fantastic. This is what is even needed in this country.
President.
It's a working president. He's getting things done. He's going down to the ground and seeing that things are actually taking place. People who are not working that day, they didn't have a job. He would go into an industry, find that people are not working. You go home. We bring in people who are actually going to work. Was it working at that time, Tundu? And what has changed if the narrative of this seemingly working president has now turned into something else of terror, as it were, from what you suggest?
I saw an interview when I was in hospital, when I was at the Nairobi hospital. There was a discussion on television about, Kenya and Tanzania comparing Magufuli and Uhuru. And one gentleman said, you see, the difference between Tanzania and Kenya is this. Our president, Uhuru Kenyatta, is the president. He is not a human resources officer. Magufuli ni afisa utumishi. It is not the business of the president of the country to go to offices to see who is late and who has come to office early. That is not part of his job description. The fact that he's doing that is a verdict. The verdict is that must be a failing state.
Yep.
If you have a president,
but don't you think, Tundu, that that also indicates that he was coming in to taking over a government that had gotten to a point where he kept saying, "Kuna uzembe serikalini." There were people who are supposed to be working, they're not working. Yes, he's not the HR, but he is the chief executive. And if the chief executive decides to walk around and see what his departments are doing, that's within the purview of the chief executive. Basically, this was Magufuli trying to bring back order and discipline in public service.
And where did it end?
With order and discipline.
Where is order and discipline? The
Even in the opposition.
The country is in a shambles. The country, we are going the way of Zimbabwe. Guys, we are going the way of Robert Mugabe, Zimbabwe. That's where we are.
So let me just ask you a direct question. Was there a return to order and discipline in public service at that point? Especially, let's take one example. A lot of fear. Let me give one example. The example where he declared that, you know what, we know that our administrative capital of this country is in Dodoma. But we have seen many government offices, even national government offices, everybody moving to Dar es Salaam. And he ordered, let's everybody head back to Dodoma and operate from Dodoma. Was that not a good thing?
No, it wasn't.
Why?
Of all the problems that we have, my brother, of all the problems that need resources to tackle, is moving the capital to Dodoma one of them?
It could be
for a country that cannot afford to educate its young, we have to get money from the World Bank to educate our children. Our secondary school program is mkopo wa benki ya dunia. Okay? For a country that cannot afford anything, is moving a capital from Dar es Salaam to Dodoma a priority, really.
But what is wrong? But what is wrong with that?
I actually want to ask a more pertinent question. With all the resources Tanzania has, Mheshimiwa, how is it that you say they cannot even afford to pay for the education of their children?
I'm saying because tumepata mkopo wa Benki ya Dunia.
Lakini kusema kweli Tanzania sina uwezo jamani.
Uko wapi?
Rasilimali, you guys have minerals.
You have minerals, I mean surely.
Highly arable lands.
Do we have more minerals than Congo, than DRC?
Of course not.
No, I don't think so, but you do have. And DRC, unless it has recently improved, was in a far more deplorable condition than Tanzania.
But that's precisely the point I'm saying, that having natural wealth alone is not panacea to your problems. We are the third largest producer of gold in the continent. All right?
Yeah.
How much money do we get of that gold?
Paltry sums.
How much?
Paltry sums. And in fact, now the president came in and got into that area of mining. And he said, let's review how these companies are operating. They're taking our minerals and we are getting nothing out of it. And he went there straight to deal with that. Would you fault him for that?
And I have faulted him publicly, and I still fault him today. Show us the numbers. Show us, tuonyeshe mahesabu.
What numbers?
Our mahesabu ya government takings for minerals after these policies were brought into our statute books in 2017. After the president seized the property of one of the mining companies, saying that we had been cheated of $495 billion US dollars. Billion US dollars. And that's why we are taking over their assets.
Okay.
And then they talked about it, and we ended up being promised to get $300 million payable over 7 years. All right?
All right.
Usually, because they couldn't pay the salaries of public employees, they told that mining company, Jamani, give us 100 million of those 300. Ili tulipe mishahara. So show us the numbers.
So that policy did not work.
Backfired big time. Foreign direct investment has disappeared.
What is the reason why it backfired, from in your opinion?
It backfired because once you do things like that, you scare away investors. Which Kenyan businessman wants to invest in Tanzania now? Which European or American or Chinese investor wants to invest in Tanzania now? When property rights are not respected like that by the government in power.
How would you have handled it?
So
How would you have handled it if you were the president and you're saying Tanzania, the third largest gold exporter in Africa, and then you're seeing the kind of situation your economy is in? How would you have addressed this issue?
I would have addressed it by looking at what the root cause is. And the root cause is you have a situation where you have negotiated. We have negotiated agreements with the individual companies. We have entered into bilateral investment treaties with their home government. We are part of the multilateral investment guarantee agency of the World Bank. We have international obligations to these investors and to the world. So now the first thing that you do is not to go about seizing their property. The first thing that you do is to sit down and say, what is the problem here? Why are we getting paltry sums from our minerals? And the thing is, you can mine them on your own, and therefore you have entered into all these international arrangements. Go back to those arrangements. Renegotiate. Okay?
Yep.
Renegotiate in good faith. If you blackmail people you run afoul of the law. Now, you can do what you like in Tanzania, but you cannot get away with it internationally. Money will run away from your economy. So what has happened is exactly that. People have fled with their capital. You get the point?
Yeah, we get the point. Good point. Tundu, we want to thank you very much. We're coming to the end of the hour, which is the end of this particular interview. We thank you very much for speaking to us. Now, what message would you give to the people who are listening to you, who are Tanzanians, who are members of the East African community? What message would you have for them?
My message to Tanzanians first is, in October we have an opportunity to reverse course. We have an opportunity to get rid of these 5 years of tyranny. It is going to be difficult. It's going to be absolutely difficult. But we can do it if we decide. And I ask my people to make a decision to get rid of this tyranny this election year. To our East African brothers and sisters, Tanzania matters to you a lot. If Tanzania goes aflame, Kenya and Uganda and all our other neighbors will get burnt. And therefore, what is happening in Tanzania is utterly important to you as well. Help us. Keep talking about Tanzania. Keep shouting if something goes wrong. Keep our back as well.
All
Protect us from ourselves if need be.
Well said. Thank you very much. Tundu Antiphas Mugwai Lissu, Tanzanian lawyer, Chadema opposition leader, hoping to get the Chadema ticket to vie in the presidential election in October this year. Have a good day in Belgium.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Tundu.
for
Really
making the
appreciate
time.
this.
Asante.
Karibu sana.
This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.